Okay, this is a topic I'm really excited to touch on. This is something that comes up all the time in my work and even in my social life. I was out to dinner with a couple of friends and right on this topic all night long. Okay, so what am I talking about here? When is the right time to give up on a relationship? To be clear, you have to answer a couple of fundamental questions first. The most important is what I'm not liking about my current relationship forgivable or unforgivable? Forgivable issues are the relationship's not feeling right for some reason. I'm not having as much fun as I used to have. I've been thinking about how, life would be without the relationship. That's pretty forgivable, something to dig into. Unforgivable is different. Unforgivable mostly has to do with things like abuse. So just to be clear, if abuse is what we're talking about, that falls into a whole different category. You need to use your support system, you need to get some help, and you need to make sure that you're safe. But separate from all of that, let's dig into this topic. To lay the foundation for this, we have to agree on a couple of things. The most important is we all bring our own baggage to the table. Now, I don't want to dive too deep into the topic of neuroses, but we need to touch on it a little bit. Number one, all of us can be neurotic. When you read about neuroses, it sounds like there's neurotic people, and then there's the rest of us who have no neuroses whatsoever. And I think most of us, if we think about it, recognize that couldn't possibly be true. Really, the way this works is we all have some neuroses, some of us more than others, and some of us are struggling more with it right now. I think a fair way to see neuroses is we're all capable of being more neurotic or less neurotic. It has a whole lot to do with how we're doing in the moment. How much stress are we under? How safe do we feel? How well are we taking care of ourselves? The worse we get in those areas, and quite honestly, the more neurotic we're going to look and the more neurotic we're going to be. On the other hand, if we're doing really well, getting our sleep, taking care of ourselves, exercising, we're not having a ton of stress, and we're feeling pretty safe, all of that neurotic stuff kind of seems to get better. So from that point of view, neuroses is really probably along a spectrum, and we move along that spectrum back and forth depending on those areas. This is where the relationship piece comes in. So let's back up a tiny little bit and talk about relationships. And again, not diving in too deeply, in the beginning of a relationship, we enjoy this pretty magical thing that a lot of us refer to as the magic of new beginnings. There's all kinds of optimism. You can idealize your partner. You can idealize the relationship. You can imagine wonderful things happening forever. That can be pretty intoxicating. And all of that's wonderful. There's really nothing wrong with all of that. It's just not the full picture. As time passes, the picture of the relationship gets more complete. Over time, both of you are going to go through times where stress is higher, stress is lower, your self-care is better, your self-care is worse, and that neuroses, remember that spectrum, is going to be moving back and forth. Now, this is a piece that I find really interesting, because the longer a relationship moves along, the more of our own neuroses starts to get injected into the relationship space. Let's say, for example, part of my neurosis is that I have a hard time recognizing what my needs are. To make this real, let's talk about a couple of examples. A common character type is, say, the martyr. The martyr usually has a pretty anxious attachment style. They're afraid that other people may not care for them, may not meet their needs, and so they do a lot of caretaking behaviors. They're always checking on others, and one of the key features here is that somebody who gets stuck in that bit of neurosis has a hard time recognizing or even bringing to awareness what their needs are. So imagine in our example, this individual with that specific brand of neurosis goes through periods of more stress, more neurosis, less neurosis. Over time, elements of that piece of that individual's neurosis are going to get put into the relationship. And this is where I think things get really interesting, because in that individual, their own feelings about their neurosis showing up in the relationship space will start to have something of a feedback loop. So how does this work? Let's say we're a year into the relationship. We've been through a number of different cycles of doing better, doing worse, doing better, doing worse. And in that process, this individual who has a harder time identifying their own needs and making sure those needs get met, it's almost guaranteed that that person will start to imagine that that neurosis doesn't live within themselves, it lives within the relationship. So that person will start to feel resentment that their needs that they're not even conscious of aren't being met in the relationship, and it must be the relationship or my partner's fault. So let's walk through that step by step. Number one, we have this intoxicating new experience with the magic of new beginnings, creating a relationship that, unsurprisingly, is completely free of all of my own personal neuroses. Then as time passes, I'm doing better, I'm doing worse, I'm doing better, I'm doing worse. Whatever my issues are start to show up in the relationship space, and then comes something of a mental trick. Instead of me being aware of my own neurosis, and that neurosis is now being reflected out into the relationship space, I imagine that the thing I'm not liking belongs to the relationship or the relationship dynamic, which it does in a sense, but it came from me. Or number two, I actually blame my partner for being incapable of knowing my needs, incapable of meeting my needs, even though the core issue is I'm the one who can't see the needs. I'm the one who can't express them. So if somebody comes into a relationship with a little bit more narcissism than typical, when they go through stress, when they have a more difficult time, that narcissism shows up heavier, it shows up lighter, it shows up heavier. And before long, that individual starts to have thoughts like, this relationship isn't capable of validating me. This relationship doesn't value me. This relationship doesn't see how special I am. Or again, the step further, my partner is incapable of seeing how special I am. So I think with that dynamic sort of outlined, I think it's a good time to come back to the question, when's the right time to give up on a relationship? To put the answer simply, it really comes down to, is the content in the relationship or what I'm seeing or feeling about my partner really related to the relationship, to my partner, or is it my own baggage that I've actually put out into that space and I'm not liking it anymore? Thinking about a relationship this way gives us some choices. So now to the point that gets right to the heart of this question. If I don't deal with this issue today in this relationship, how likely am I to bring this exact same dynamic into my next relationship? And to dig a little deeper, ask yourself this. Has this issue that I'm not liking about this relationship shown up in my other relationships? If the answer is yes, then you've probably found something that you bring into the dynamic, that it finds itself in the space of the relationship after a period of time, and that you really don't like it. So let's recognize what we are saying and what we're not saying when we look at this question this way. Number one, I don't think you can say whether this relationship is going to be the relationship for the rest of your life. That's not really what we're asking. And really, this is what I think we're asking. If I choose to take some accountability for what I'm not liking in my relationship, is that likely to lead me down a path that lets me understand better about what I bring to a relationship and how I can make my relationships function better from a fundamental point of view? So summarizing, let's talk about accountability. How accountable are we within our relationship of owning the fact that within the relationship, some of what we don't like about the relationship isn't the relationship itself and may not be the other person at all. Some of it's going to be our own baggage that we bring to the relationship, and that baggage, whether we're aware of it or not, finds its way into the relationship and creates a serious amount of discomfort. I mean, really, how ironic is it that the very stuff we don't like about ourselves ends up external to us within our relationship and then projected onto another human being? Through being accountable, we can then have the chance to take some ownership. Take the ownership of what is out there in the relationship, what are we projecting, what piece of it is our own, and what piece of it actually belongs to this other very human individual, and then have the choice to ask, what do I want to do about it? Again, going back to somebody who tends to be a martyr, that person has the task of getting more in touch with their wants, more in touch with their needs, learning how to communicate those. And until they do, this dynamic is absolutely guaranteed to show up time after time. And the individual that might lean narcissistic, until that person recognizes it and deals with it, brings it under some kind of control, their relationships will feel unsatisfying, unrewarding. They'll feel underappreciated. And until they get that under control, you can guarantee this is going to show up in every new relationship they create. So coming back to the question, when is the right time to give up on a relationship? It could be viewed from a different perspective. Is there work for me to do in this relationship that I saw so much value in that could help me own my stuff better so that either this relationship could return to how good it was before, or in the future, I have a shot to create relationships that work better for me. Now remember, to be really clear, this isn't about whether relationships are safe or not. That's more fundamental. You have to ask that question in the beginning. If your relationship isn't safe, get help. But if your relationship is fundamentally safe, meaning that what's going on in the relationship is forgivable, the real question isn't, should I stay in the relationship or not? The real question should be, is there something for me to work on here that can rescue what I saw in the beginning and that could help me as a human being that's capable of having the relationships I actually want, including massively improving the relationship you're in right now? Which brings us right to one of life's most interesting ironies. What we tend to not like about our relationship has a whole lot more to do with us than it does anybody else. A lot of the time, the thing people most dislike about their relationship is actually their own neuroses projected out onto it, which really shouldn't be surprising at all. After all, we do develop our neuroses based on the things in life that hurt us or scare us the most. So when those very things are projected out into our relationship or even onto our partner, having those things in the relationship space is going to be seriously uncomfortable. So I hope the question whether we should stay in a relationship or leave a relationship has a little more context. Is there good work that can be done in figuring things out? So by asking the really critical question, is there something about me I need to understand better in what I do with relationships? There's something genuinely rewarding looking at relationships this way, as opportunities for looking at oneself and how you can have the life you'd like to have. If you like the video, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing if you'd like more content like it. Thank you.